Thank you. All right, yet another edition of Serious Academics with a Sense of Humor, a subsidiary of Economists Do It With Models, invented by Jody Beggs. And I'm John Merrifield, and my handle on the internet is Big Picture Doc. You see I have some leftovers from the previous lesson. Let me get that out of the way. Something about recording is a little different from actually giving a lecture for some strange reason. All right, so we're going to talk about third-party payment here, how that affects things. In particular, we're going to look at how it affects healthcare, because, hey, that's 1/6 of our economy and counting. And, so look around, about 1 out of every 6 people you see is somehow involved in healthcare, in the medical industry. All right, so in this case, in this example, what we have typically is not a fixed amount of third-party payment for something that you're buying, like 10 cents each or 50 cents each. Usually it's a percentage amount. Okay, so they might pay 10% of the bill or 50% of the bill or 90% of the bill, maybe occasionally 100%. There are co-payments, deductibles. That's the patient share. That's the out-of-pocket cost. That's the part you lose if you go see the doctor, or don't lose if you don't see the doctor. More and more healthcare is being financed by fixed costs. In other words, you got to pay your taxes, and you're probably going to pay your insurance premiums, or it's part of what you pay is being employed, and it just isn't. You'd be paid more in wages if it weren't for all those benefits that your employer has to finance, or does finance. I'm not sure if they feel like they have to. So the reason that it's interesting to look at third-party payment is because it changes the marginal cost to the consumer. The out-of-pocket cost has changed. Now, the total amount spent is probably more than ever, okay, through the taxes and the insurance payment plus the out-of-pocket costs. But what matters a lot is, hey, I can't do anything about all that money I paid for my insurance premium. That's gone. I'm not going to get any of that back. Can't do anything about my taxes either. They're not going to give me back my taxes if I don't see the doctor. Okay, all that's at issue in visiting the doctor is the copayment and the deductible, which may be, in many cases, a lot less than what it actually costs them to treat you. So most people are doing the rational thing, and they're thinking, okay, is it hurt enough? Is it going to, is it worth the time and money to go see the doctor? And the money part of it is, yeah, what's my likely copayment and deductible? And most people say, oh, whatever the bill is, whatever, doesn't matter. I'm in for, my $35 deductible and or copayment. All right, so people are doing their marginal analysis thing, trying to figure out whether they want to go on that basis. And part of the message of this lesson, or the thing that we want to talk about, is how third-party payment yields moral hazard. So you're at the doctor's office and you're thinking, oh man, it hurts. Doc, what can you do for me? Well, we can do these things, and by the way, that'll be a couple $1,000s. And fortunately, your problem wasn't a heart ailment, because right then you went, oh, gasp, I don't have a couple $1,000s. The doctor says, hold on, relax, it's going to be okay. Yes, the treatment cost, but you're covered. Either you're poor and you have Medicaid, or you're old and you have Medicare, or you have insurance, and your cost is only $100. Go for it, Doc. I got $100. I'm willing to pay $100, which in economic jargon means that your marginal benefit is worth more than $100. But apparently, from this reaction, it's isn't worth $2,000. And in most cases, people could come up with the $2,000 or whatever if they had to. They had other plans for that money. It didn't hurt that bad. It would have fixed itself. It would have healed. It just would have hurt. It would have taken longer. You would have looked a little funny for a little longer if that was, if the problem was an injury. But, you weren't going to die. You weren't going to lose a limb. You weren't going to be permanently impaired. It was a matter, like most healthcare is, how fast do you want it fixed, and how little and how long do you want it to hurt or not hurt? All right, so anyway, that's the moral hazard issue. Let's talk about the economics aspect of it a little bit here, and how that arises, and how we can do it with models and with a sense of humor. Again, not guaranteeing that it'll be funny, but there will be periodic attempts at a sense of humor. All right, now in the case of the healthcare, what we discover, and what we'll see with our model, is that once we lower the marginal cost of visiting the doctor and seeking care, the marginal cost not to deliver the service, but the incremental cost to the patient above and beyond what he or she has already paid through taxes and insurance premiums, we see that a lot more people want a lot more health care. Gosh, I thought it was a need, which means there wasn't any choice. So we discover suddenly, no, yeah, sure, it's a need sometimes. You fell off the roof, or you hit a car, or a car hit you, or really serious disease, or so, yeah, it's a need. But while those headline grabbing incidents are just that, headline grabbing, they're not the majority of things that medical doctors tend to do. Most of it is discretionary, and so price does matter. And so, yeah, the demand line does slope downward as always. See, if it was a need, the demand line would be a vertical line. Okay? If it's a need, hey, we got to find the money to get it done, otherwise, or something, life or, arm is going to not work again, or something very, very serious. Okay, so if we make it more of a fixed cost and less of a variable cost to get treatment, we see that people do a lot more of it, and suddenly the cost goes up, and oops, we don't want to spend 6 times as much for healthcare. By the way, that's what the model will show in a minute. Just my example. Won't always cost that much. Oh, well, what do we do now? We've declared an entitlement. We said, hey, we want it to be a right. We don't want people to have to spend all that much money on healthcare. We're going to cover some of their expense. Yeah, co-payment deductible, but most of it will cover, oh, wow, people want a lot more healthcare now than they used to. What do we do to contain the costs? Well, we might have some rules about who's eligible for what. That may or may not help. It's called rationing. Gasp, some of you heard that in political campaigns out there. Markets, that's what they do. They ration. It's not a question of whether rationing is going to occur. It's a question of how it's going to occur. Scarcity is a fact of life. We can't have all of everything that we want, even if our life is in jeopardy. Just because a medical technology might exist that allow you to live to 100, the resources are just not out there. That's why we economists are called the dismal science people. We keep saying, it would sure be nice to let grandma live to be 100, with all these $1 million treatments, and we just don't have enough resources. Yes, money, it stands for what these resources cost, for their opportunity cost, to do all of these things for everybody for whom that might get that benefit. So we do rationing by rules. Some faceless, nameless bureaucrat somewhere decides who's eligible for what treatment and who will be denied by some cold-hearted letter that arrives. Sorry, you're too old or too something else. You are not eligible for this treatment. Basically, there's no hand waving in the letter that says goodbye. Basically, that's what it says. Or, of course, there's the other kind of rationing that says, costs money. Do you have it? Oh, you don't? Sorry. Those who are productive in their lives and earned lots of money, didn't spend it all, can have this treatment. And those who are broke for whatever reason, maybe they had a lot of money, maybe they spent it all. Hey, you had a good time. It's not up to us to take care of you. Now that you blew all your money, it's the money, the price tag stands for real things. Okay, so I'll get to the graph in a minute. We're going to do it with a model, but I just want to build up to it. Suppose the maximum willingness to pay for something. Let me draw that graph again. Okay, the maximum willingness to pay, what was that? That was that number up here. Okay, the maximum, demand line, sorry, sloppy. Okay, suppose the maximum willingness to pay for something. The most that anybody will spend on it is $20. Just to have a nice round number to work with, 20 bucks. Now we come along and say, we're only going to make the buyer, the patient, pay 1/5 of the cost. Now what's the maximum willingness to pay? It's 100. How do I know that? Well, there's a simple little rule that says the demand increases by the reciprocal of the patient share, and as students, by habit, you may be tempted to memorize that. I would urge you not to, for the sake of your intellectual development. But that's what the rule is, okay? That the demand increases by the reciprocal of the patient share. There's a lot of rules, and they're all hard to remember unless you understand them. So what's the basis of it? Well, back to our $20. If you charge somebody $100, but only made them pay 20% of it, where are you at? What do you have to charge them? $20. Okay? You see, there's the basis of it. Okay, the $100 that results from quadrupling or quintupling, anyway, 5 times the $20. Okay, so let's see, I might run off the page here, but see, if this is 20, that's 100. Okay, this is the D0, and that's D1. Okay, so the demand increases a lot when we tell the buyer that they only have to pay 1/5 of the cost. Of course, if the supply is out here, it's not going to make much difference, right, between the new and old equilibrium. What if the supply is here? Oops. The equilibrium was point A. Now the equilibrium will be point B. Now we will be spending this much. We'll be spending this much, this price, P prime times Q prime, right? Spending, total revenue, price times quantity. How many did we buy? Q prime. What do we pay for each one of them? P prime. That's how much we'll be spending. Versus, before we did that, all we would be spending is this much, P sub E times Q sub E. How much more is P prime times Q prime than P sub E times Q sub E? A lot more. See, that's how much spending would go up on the good. That may be unacceptable. That's why we might go to that administrative rationing, or we might go to price control and say, no, see, most people don't understand the economics of this and about how prices are needed to signal things and to ration out the amount available. They're saying, hey, this P sub E was good enough before. Why should we let these greedy sellers, would be the thinking, charge more than that, take advantage of these payments? So we'll just cap the price at where it was to begin with. Okay, not the 20. The 20 is right here. P sub E, we haven't given a number to that. But look, now that quantity demanded at the P sub E is there, the quantity supplied is still here, we have a shortage. That's why if you follow healthcare systems at all via the news that are mostly government run, there's a lot of shortages of a lot of things, a lot of wait lists for a lot of things, a lot of waiting for things, right? Because the amount desired at the lower limited price is a lot more than the amount available. All right, with that, since I messed up on one of my previous ones over dwelling too much on my graph, let us move to the pretty graph, and hopefully I will know when to move back from it opportunistically. All right, so here we have our original demand on here, and there's the 20, right? So I use that on purpose because that's on my nicely drawn graph. Okay, so here's our demand line. Okay, in fact, there we go. There's D0, and there it is. Okay, so here's our initial equilibrium, point A. Okay, price P0, quantity QE0, equilibrium quantity. And then we come along and we say, okay, we're going to cover 80% of the cost by insurance or by taxes or some third-party payment. That's what we mean by third-party payment. Somebody other than the buyer is going to pay for some or all of it. So now our new demand line, okay, is going to be here. And by the way, for those of you in my one class where you'll actually see this, on the homework, you're not required to make this shift, okay, but you are required to know what this number is based on the patient share. But on the exam, you might have to know to make this shift and know the number. So do keep that in mind. I'll make an announcement of that in one of the emails. All right, so now we have this new demand line on here, right, the new one. And so with our supply line, see, what does this mean? I stuck underneath there. MS equals MPC. Marginal social cost equals marginal private cost. Okay, so what we're saying is there's not any spillovers or any externalities. Nobody is affected by the production of this good other than the people producing it. There aren't any spillovers on other people. Okay, we've done the same thing on the demand side. We've said there aren't any third parties benefiting when consumers of this service consume it. And the only beneficiary is the person getting the service. So, that wouldn't be true if we were talking about something that was like for a contagious disease. Okay, then third parties would benefit from you inoculating yourself against the flu, for example. But for most things, it's accurate. All right, so now our new equilibrium is point B. Okay, and the new price times quantity is a lot more than the old price times quantity. Right? What is it? About 6 times more. Right? This, right? So this box, you get about 6 of those in this bigger box. Okay, so the third-party payment promise has caused the spending on this good by somebody, right? A combination of the 20% from you and the 80% from the third party to increase from P0 times Q0 to P1 times Q1. If that's unacceptable from a budgetary standpoint, then we have, oh, I put it over here already. Then we have a situation like this where we allow maybe the price to only rise that level. See, now we're talking price ceiling, okay, P maximum. Okay, so the quantity supplied at that price, or I just drew this dot here, call it A, since I don't have an A on that graph, and then B would be the quantity demanded, and so we have that shortage indicated on there. Now back to my other graph. I know I'm still talking to a machine, and no one out in video land can see me. See where it says DWL there? Okay, that's that moral hazard thing, right? If people only have to pay a fraction of the cost of things delivered to them, then they're liable to want things that cost way more to produce than it is worth to them, and beyond the market equilibrium, the additional value is less than the additional cost. Society suffers a loss, a deadweight loss it's called, equal to that size of that triangle. There's an A there, there's a B here, and there's a C there, so the deadweight loss triangle is triangle ABC, and 1/2 the base times the height tells you the loss per increment of time to society. You can see that the loss is bigger than the normal gains from trade. Right, the consumer surplus plus producer surplus is right there before the demand is inflated with the third-party payment. Let me let you absorb that a little bit, either here in the room or out there in video land, while I catch up to my outline here and see what else I've discovered, what else I've got to cover. You may have heard the phrase, if you think it's expensive now, wait till it's free. Well, that's what this is showing. If you think it's expensive now, wait till somebody else picks up most of the tab for it. Have you ever gone out to dinner with a bunch of people where you're going to split the tab equally once you're done? You make sure you've got a lot of money in your wallet before you do one of those adventures. And last time I did it was $80 my share, because people would order things knowing that the marginal cost to them of each thing was 1/10 of however many people were at the table. There's 10 people at the table, you order some fancy dessert, and the additional cost to you is just 1/10 of that. That same kind of an idea, a moral hazard. You know you're not going to have to pay for all of it. You might want it. Yeah, if you want the whole dessert, $10, no, I don't want it that bad. Oh, $1, my share, my 1/10. Go for it. Yeah, let's do that. Pile on those goodies.